The biggest World Cup in history. Stop for a moment and think about this. Years from now, when someone asks what the biggest World Cup of all time was, maybe the answer will be obvious. We are not just talking about the World Cup with the most national teams. We are not just talking about the World Cup with the most matches. We are talking about the World Cup where legends challenged time. The World Cup where records once considered impossible began to fall. The World Cup where an entire generation of superstars met on the same stage. Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo, Neymar, Mbappé, Lamine Yamal, Harry Kane, and dozens of other players who arrived in the United States, Mexico, and Canada, knowing that they might be living the most important opportunity of their careers. But there is something even more impressive. Some of these records may never be broken again. Others could be shattered in the coming days. And some are being written right now while you are watching this video. Today, you are going to discover why the 2026 World Cup could be remembered forever as the greatest World Cup in football history. And the final chapter of this story could change the debate over who the greatest player of all time really was. For almost 3 decades, the world had grown used to a 32-team World Cup. That was the traditional format. But in 2026, everything changed. For the first time in history, 48 nations were given the chance to compete in the biggest sporting tournament on the planet. The result? More matches, more stories, more rivalries, more emotion, more unlikely heroes, more countries dreaming of the impossible. The World Cup did not just grow in size, it grew in importance. Never before had so many people been watching a single sporting event at the same time, and maybe we will never see anything like this again. There is a special reason why this edition feels so different. It could mark the final goodbye of the most talented generation football has ever produced. For almost 20 years, football belonged to 2 men, Lionel Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo. They broke records, they won titles, they turned the impossible into routine. And when many believed their World Cup stories were already over, they came back. But this time, something is different. Time. The clock is ticking, and every match could be the last. Every goal could be historic. Every celebration could live forever. We are watching the end of an era, and rarely does the world get the privilege of witnessing something like this live. Maybe the greatest symbol of this World Cup is Lionel Messi. When he lifted the trophy in 2022, many believed that was the perfect conclusion, the ideal ending, the final chapter of a legendary career. But Messi decided to keep going, and he came back to do what he has always done best, create history. With every match he plays, the Argentine extends records that once seemed unreachable. He has become one of the greatest symbols in World Cup history, a player who crossed generations, a player who competed in World Cups across 3 different decades, an athlete who continues to break records even after winning almost everything there is to win. But the question remains, how far can Messi go? While Messi tries to extend his legacy, someone is chasing him, and maybe this player is the strongest candidate to dominate world football for the next 10 years. Kylian Mbappé. The Frenchman looks like he was created to play World Cups. Speed, decision-making, personality, coldness under pressure, and goals. A lot of goals. Even at a young age, he is already among the greatest scorers in the history of the tournament. And the most frightening part? He is still far from the final peak of his career. While Messi challenges time, Mbappé challenges the records. And maybe we are witnessing the rise of the next great owner of the World Cup. But there is one story that makes this World Cup even more special. A story that millions of Brazilians know very well. The story of Neymar. For more than a decade, he carried the weight of an entire nation's expectations. He was the chosen boy expected to bring Brazil its long-awaited 6th World Cup title. But the road was never easy. In 2014, an injury interrupted the dream on home soil. Brazil had to continue without its main player, and what happened next went down in history in the most painful way possible. In 2018, another frustration came. In 2022, another devastating elimination. And when the final whistle blew, many believed that had been Neymar's last World Cup. The end of the story, the final chapter. But football loves to challenge predictions, and now Neymar has something very few players ever receive. One last opportunity, one last dance, one last chance to turn a brilliant career into something even greater. Because there is a huge difference between being remembered as one of the greatest players in history and being remembered as the man who brought the World Cup back to Brazil. Maybe no story in this World Cup is more emotional than this one. But this World Cup does not belong only to the veterans. It also belongs to the heirs: Lamine Yamal, Jude Bellingham, Pedri, Musiala, and an entire generation of young talents. Every World Cup has a moment of transition, the moment when the Kings realize that new contenders have arrived. We are watching the meeting point between the past, the present, and the future. The legends trying to eternalize their names, and the young stars trying to build theirs. And here is why this World Cup is different from all the others. It is not just a competition. It is a historic event. It is the biggest World Cup ever held. It is the World Cup of records. It is the World Cup of farewells. It is the World Cup of last chances. It is the World Cup where Messi continues to make history. It is the World Cup where Cristiano Ronaldo defies age. It is the World Cup where Mbappé chases eternity. It is the World Cup where Neymar searches for the missing chapter of his career. It is the World Cup where a new generation tries to take the throne. Never before have so many massive stories happened at the same time. 20 years from now, when fans look back, maybe they will not only remember who became champion, maybe they will remember the privilege of watching all of this happen live. Because some World Cups produce champions, others produce legends, but only a rare few produce history while they are still happening. And that is exactly what we are witnessing right now. The greatest World Cup football has ever seen, and maybe the greatest one we will ever see in our lifetime.